5th through 9th of Cancer. I am Gunnar Faust, a wrongfully accused convict, sprung from his bonds by the Djinn Undal Igwanti. This azure-fleshed humanoid tells me he requires my services to locate an old goddess's temple. Fearing that I may yet lose my humanity to the will of others, I have purchased a packet of blank paper so that my own will may yet be preserved and my sanity need not shrivel away. Undal is not my only companion. We are joined also by a thick-furred giant calling himself the Conflict, who used to be my jailer until his gnomish friend convinced him to turn me loose, and a paladin of Harrow who gave his personal comforts away to wield the will of justice. Together we have taken a boat south from Thriss to Urkjakart, an island territory under the control of orcs. In spite of a sudden brackishness in the ocean, we had arrived within our 5-day projection. Our vessel's captain had apparently gone mad when confronted with the storm and sailed us directly into it, much to the dismay of his fellow sailors. Whispers of mutiny are creeping about the ship, which I am not surprised of when a man like our captain ought to know of the dangers of the open ocean. The myriad talents of my companions become frightening and dismal to my ears. To see their performances personally should prove fascinating to my calculations in battle. The Conflict's strength runs deep into his roots, as allegedly he had cloven several of the insidious trunk-like arms from an from an highly intelligent kraken with but one swing of a glaive. Furthermore, Righteous, the paladin I had managed to employ for Undal's journey, carries aloft awe-inspiring miracles bestowed by his deity. Were that not enough, he allegedly commits to combat without need for armor, lives on with no want of coin, and dresses only in rags. I have yet to witness Undal's true power, but childhood tales of Djinn assure me he is not to be trifled with. He has already demonstrated a propensity for telepathy and flight. Although clearly superhuman, these abilities do not exemplify his true elemental nature, which no doubt he must possess. I have been led to understand that these beings wield the arcane magic of talented wizards in the way a child may wield their imagination. Looking out across the thinning seas, I believe I can spot the beachhead of Urkjakart. The ship's lookout has not yet called for it. A full day away yet. I will take this opportunity for an extra measure of rest in preparation for our inevitable trek across the tropical desert island. We have landed. Sorry. 10th and 11th of Cancer. We have landed on the beachhead of Urkjakart and bade farewell to the fine crew of our vessel. To my frustration, Righteous invited the old fool sailor to come along after hearing his plea. Our limited supplies will strain at this decision, and for a man so concerned with keeping quick time at sea, he spared not a single second in slowing us down by talking to each of us. I am likely to be exaggerating just a bit, as the time we've lost in an hour and some minutes, but the risk of distracting the more skilled members of our party is something I do not enjoy. To begin, we had to cross miles of humid sand, the exact topology of which I can only theorize. Upon completing my apprenticeship, the last, most important thing I have learned is this: when journeying, especially in unfamiliar and dangerous territory, everyone has a responsibility to the party, a duty to perform for the success of the mission. But then I can confirm that these concerns did not cause us too much trouble in the end. I digress. The only hint of society upon this island is the village of the Orc peoples, which from time to time throughout the year sends a merchant ship back to the mainland to trade in fish and salt. These two exports are believed to be the only resources available to the islanders, and so our expedition to the village I suggested would do best without a need to hunt. Righteous assured my comfort with his miracles, which produced enough food and water to sustain us for the night's camp. We packed up and set to march. By the first hour of sunlight, I could see the settlement on the horizon by sunset, but not wanting to cause stir by showing up in the dark of night, I suggested waiting until light and added, "Their society, as I was taught, is unlike ours. I don't want to risk being seen as invaders." Undal wasted no time in countering my suggestion with authority. "We must reach their village tonight. Do you think your skin is so different that you'll not find a room to rent, Faust?" His emphasis on skin and Faust betrayed his mockery of what I once called my society. No sense in lashing out when the truth cuts deeper. To think that his species would regard us mortals as wild animals, it's reasonable that Undal's society would see humanity as we see the flora and fauna of the land. However, being likened to orcs feels strange in a way of its own. To my surprise, Undal was not entirely wrong. Although the settlement did not have a proper name nor the usual signage, they did have an established inn with warm meals to purchase with actual sovereigns from the mainland and inexpensive. The orc took our paltry copper coins as readily as the old orc bartender in Thriss would take silver. There were only 2 rooms to rent, with a few beds to each, but all were available to us. Undal decided our sleeping arrangements, he and I in one room, Righteous, the conflict informer, Captain Francis Orson, in the other. He said, as his room was decided, "That would be Captain Francis Orson's room to you, Blue Boy," which we all corrected him by adding the former to his title, while the Djinn struck him with silence. Our beds were filled and dressed comfortably, and here I resign myself to writing while I grow tired under the light of a glass lantern, questioning the real difference in our many societies. 12th through 14th Cancer. The hospitality of the Orc tribe may have undone some of the bias instilled by the fearful adults of my childhood. While a few of the older orcs openly expressed their hatred for we who are soft of flesh, the majority paid us no mind, and we went about gathering information to locate our temple. Undal awoke before me on the 12th and roused me after finding a map maker. "This map I bought should lead us to the temple. Can you read it?" I looked it over and found it quite simple and fairly legible. Undal left it in my care and added, "We leave at noon. You have 5 hours to make preparations, unless you have some objection." I had none. I went about the town to purchase some rations of salted fish. Preserved meats can't ever be fresh, but this was the sort of opportunity I enjoyed in travel, trying the local fare in person. I asked Righteous to prepare defensive miracles, to which he agreed after noting our improved rations, and let Orson know that following us meant he would possibly have to fight, which required more than a single flintlock. The man was somehow on a drunk with the breakfast wine and claimed to have a few tricks to spare him the firearm. We then gathered at the far end of the village. We 5 fortified our resolve and set out into the seemingly endless desert. It's always desert underfoot. I swear this theme will not leave me at peace. Theme, I write. Maybe that Yoni influenced me once more before. Well, he would say, "Before losing my head." I bet he'd laugh about that too, were his throat not hewn so rough. With the dawn on the 13th, Righteous alerted me to a group of creatures that seemed to be following us across the sands. Peering over the sun-stained waves, I could count 3 man-sized spiders, a feature of more temperate climes, but not unheard of in the sandy heat. However, they truly seemed to follow our very path, and it was confirmed so when we packed the camp that they intended to follow the entire way. Knowing that we were incapable of outrunning spiders of that size, I asked the conflict to keep an eye on our backs while Undal took to the sky and informed me. "They're keeping their distance. I don't know if these arthropods," as I told him, "are inclined to camp, but they're absolutely waiting on us." Once more Sol did sink and rise, then on his second fall we spotted the palms that marked the edge of a series of oases surrounding the temple. Following some guide marks on the margin of the map, we came to rest before the great doors of the ruin. "This is indeed the place," remarked Undal, while gesturing to some intricate symbols carved into the stonework of the entrance. We established our camp there at the entrance, and now taking turns watching for predators, spider or otherwise. With any luck, we will secure the temple in the morning. The temple of Alavein may well have been ancient. 15th Cancer. The Temple of Alavein may well have been ancient, constructed with very primitive technology that would not suffice a common dwelling. Although the stones were set sturdily in the earth, the walls outside were not braced by any manner of buttress, and silty debris rained down from each inch of the ceiling, disturbed by our very breath. We crept into the foyer, where thick-cut pillars challenged our resolve with threatening contortions that defied everything I knew of masonry. Admittedly, fine is my knowledge, but I indeed have seen more comforting structures in my time. Righteous padded an archway that led us into a thin corridor. It would be safest if we stayed near this hallway until we can leave the temple. The walls here are stronger than those pillars by far. His assertion seemed sensible, as the ceiling and walls ahead were squat, hand-hewn stone that stretched away into the dim light fallen from the ceiling through the sparse vent holes. Excuse me. Two rotten wooden doors were fixed to either side of the hall, just 20 feet in, and trying the right side, we found ourselves in a primitive observatory with an open ceiling. 13 large monolithic stones were arranged around a precipice of rich clay earth that must have been imported here by whomever built this place. The conflict crawled up to the entrance, minding the low clearance, and with his frosted glaive in one massive paw, pointed away from us. He pulled apart the decaying door with the other. A questioning look on his face as he considered how easily it crumbled away, leaving him with a hunk of iron in his grasp, and chunks of softened wood around his hooves. Undal stood beside the conflict with folded arms, and nodded his head toward the center of the cardinal stones. "Make sure it's safe, gentlemen." I furrowed and sneered at the Djin's tone as I passed him to get in and directed Orson and Righteous to take opposing sides of the dais, with a gesture and nod in each direction. I set to another. Within seconds, the scrap of stone released a blustering gust of hot desert air as we all turned about, startled, to find Francis Orson holding open a passage that had been somehow hidden in the stonework. Although the monolith was but a few feet thick, the door he discovered led to some oasis outside, an area we had not seen on our journey inland. The bumbling sailor tried on some muddled apology as an excuse while I peered outside to see something alarming in the distance. "Close the portal immediately," I shouted, and he did so with alarum, the doorway once more concealing the vision I had beheld and refused to speak of. The 3 monstrous arthropods that had been dogging our trail in the days before were approaching the oasis from less than 100 feet away. Righteous and I tried some of the portals for ourselves and found each of the 13 stones led to some other place on the island, one to a beach, the other in the desert somewhere as far as we checked. I concluded aloud, "These passages are useless to us for now, but we may be able to use them to get back to the shore when we're done," although I immediately felt insecure about my assertion as I recall an urge to leave Undal's servitude and stay with the orcs, to escape my inevitable recapture and incarceration. Once we had convinced ourselves the portals would not pose a threat of counter-invasion, we filed back into the corridor to finish securing the temple with which concluded in the neighboring room across the way, where we now find ourselves in the presence of the very being we had set out to scorn. It is an opulent bedroom with magic fire burning at its center to provide light and heat to its occupant. The walls sparked with the deep silvery blue sheen of alchemical electrum and is beset with perfect jewel cut corundum of varying sizes and colors. Sleeping on an impossibly large bed is a gigantic buxom woman with seafoam hued flesh. She wears only a thin silken garment around her hips which covers little but her groin. Even now, as I write this, she sits there watching me with piercing golden irises. When we had first entered her quarters, she did not stir until Undal said, "This is not a good sign. Alavain should not be here." Our collective gaze fell on her inhumanly beautiful face, while her gilded eyes slowly opened to us, and she replaced her sweet, sleeping expression with a dangerously inviting smile. She sat up in place and stretched her arms up into the darkness which obscured the ceiling. Her seafoam breasts, each the size of a newborn calf, swayed to her left and to her right, drawing our eyes inward to her creamy colored nipples for just a moment before she finally spoke. "You lot are not of my flock. Have you come to conquer my land?" Her voice demanded our attention with the authority of a mind altogether removed from this reality. Only he who had the correct answer seemed able to speak. "Yes, we have come to raise your temple and construct a new vessel in the name of your sister, Se Arasi," Undal admitted, before realizing he had given us away as invaders. "That simply won't do, dear child. Put it out of your mind, because there is something much more pressing that must be dealt with." Alavain snapped her fingers once, and we five sat down to give her attention in full. "My sister bears more jealousy than I give her credit for. It must have been she who drugged my wine. How long have I been asleep?" No one could answer. I felt capable of making choices on my own. I thought about the sheer danger involved in upsetting a Djinn goddess, and, while I am certain still that my mind was not being controlled by her, decided it was best to hear her out and behave in her presence. She pointed a well-groomed nail at Undal accusingly. "You are not fully of Djinn blood. From which tribe do you come?" "My mother is human." "Is your father a servant of my sister?" "I don't know of my father's bonds. I was called to from beyond the great glaciers of this planet to aid her, with the promise of aspiring to the service of a noble." "If nobility is all you require, then you are now my servant. Your lineage will be my responsibility. If you still wish to raise my temple, then stand and slay me here where I sit." Neither Undal nor Alavain moved an inch while they waited for his answer. The words they used seemed somewhat wrong. Asking for his tribe somehow equates to his mother or father, or both. It seems as if the smaller Djinn wanted to be placed in the service of another, and yet here the goddess gave him an opportunity to kill her. Even now I doubt he could have accomplished it, but the brazen expression in the gigantic woman's voice implied that she indeed intended to take on at least one attack. "I have no reason to strike you and accept my bond as your servant," was what Undal eventually said, and all at once the five of us seemed more capable of ourselves. I took the opportunity to stand up and shake off the feeling of lethargy that I had not noticed earlier, while Alavain explained her dilemma. "I've been asleep for a very long time. If luck is on your side, then it has been fewer than 10 centuries. But we can't be too cautious when my father is involved. Oh, but you lot probably don't even know what I'm talking about. You see, my father is Salmaputra, the first Djinn and son of Krumnalkar, the Star Conqueror, whom crossed the elemental realm of fire to find the end of reality and copulate with a divine dragon on the outside." "Oh, but you two are all human, and this one seems to be one of the cursed woolly giants." She referred to Francis and I, followed by the conflict. "You don't have to worry about the details. Just know in your heart that my father intends to conquer your world if I don't establish an embassy here." These grave implications still do not sit well with me, and so I had to raise my voice. I found that, in fact, I could. What can we do to prevent this? It is nothing complicated. My father wanted a painting in 4 planes that depicts the embassy planet to be. Are any of you a masterful painter? Doing a poor job will cause the embassy to fail. I looked at Undal. He shook his head, and we both looked to Righteous, who confirmed, "Not I." The conflict scratched his whiskered chin in contemplation, and then the four of us looked to Francis Orson with a glimmer of hope. "Look, I've been at sea for the last 30 years of my life. I know naught of painting, even a piece of fruit, never mind a planet." Alavane huffed, her beguiling breast rising and falling with her breath. "Well, it's not a problem for me. I'll just go back to the realm of elemental fire to be a servant of my father, or my sister in the worst case. It's your world that will suffer under my father's law." The mounting stress of somehow losing more control made my mind spin for an answer. I just knew there was something to be done, but what? Then the answer was hinted to me, inadvertently, by Undal Iguanti's next comment. What a fine joke this has become. "I know a clown that can paint. Our only hope. I only knew one person I would trust with painting a planet. My dead friend Yoni Svet. He studied the arts and is a fine performer. The only issue is he lays dead in a mass grave at the gallows near Darenthold." Righteous' expression brightened considerably. "How long has he been dead?" Unfortunately, I crushed his optimism almost instantly. "It's been several weeks." "Dash it all, that's far too long." "Have we any other choice, gents?" The conflict brushed back his grizzled mane as he carefully selected his words. "Yes, no way around it. If you try and fail to raise her dead friend, you can just look for a painter on the mainland." Unexpectedly, our Minotaur friend did encourage the doubtful. One by one, we all resolved to at least try, except for Francis. "Forget about nonsense. We'd sooner be enslaved than bring some dead clown back to life after his time. He's probably enjoying his afterlife anyway. I'd rather drink and wait for death." From then on, we silently yet formally agreed to ignore the former sailor. "We're going to need a diamond and enough for the tithing," Righteous suggested. Alavane shrunk her body down to our size. Although shorter than me by a head and shoulder, she still carried an air of dignity and grace that no material being could match, and on that scale her breasts were no more or less noticeable, though still exposed. She gestured around the room. "Take a diamond from the wall here. I don't know about coins, but if anything of value can help them, by all means take it and use it." I did my best to chisel some diamonds away from the electrum-infused walls, and Undal shook his coin purse, showing that he had plenty to spare. Then the goddess Dijin led us back to the observatory and opened the portal nearest the back of the temple. "This will take you to the shore." She then produced a token from somewhere on her body, an absolutely baffling feat considering she wore only a sash. She handed it to me. "Throw this into the ocean, and you'll have a small boat to get to the mainland. Take some time to prepare, and I will have the canvas ready when you return." Righteous, Undal, and I proceeded to leave through the portal, and then turned back to see that the conflict made no indication that he would be joining us. "Sorry, boys. The road'll soon begin, and I would prefer to be near this thick glass when it arrives." We agreed at once that it would be a mistake to try to convince a lusty Minotaur that saving the planet was the more important choice. Deep down, I felt we had also saved ourselves some trouble in the long run. There's a content warning. It's not explicit sex, but there's references to sex in the next passage, just in case y'all are concerned. or it's coming up. I don't know if it's this one or the next one. In this chapter, anyway. 16th to 21st of Cancer. The boat bestowed to us by Alavane would not have fit the conflict. Having no time to write during the trip for concern of a wave wetting my papers and washing my ink, I submit only the nice facts still in my mind. The bow of our wooden vessel is a stylized seahorse. It has a paltry 6-foot deck, seating for 5 of my size, and the boom is unmanageable at best. We were fortunate to not find ourselves under the watchful eye of the Kraken from days before. However, the chop of the water proved just as well a method threatening to submerge us. Salted fish was fine for the dry desert, but in the bite of the morning and noon ocean air we found ourselves low on water 2 days before landfall. Finally, the vessel fell to pieces against the dock at Thriss. In the morning we will ask the house of Harrow for resurrection. Righteous has said he will speak on my behalf, although it is too long since Yoni has died to perform the rite. As a meditation on penance, the paladin asked that I spend an hour thanking Harrow for seeing us through to our goals. Agnostic am I, but not truly ignorant after meeting with a goddess. I will at least pay some respect in my heart. 22nd of Cancer. I'm sorry to be short, but I must do what I can to record this day. I've done my best to not spare any details, however my mind is further strained from the experience. I have beheld a vision of true and simple horror. My friend's body, dragged from the pits of a hell unseen, and strewn on the alleged hallowed altar of Harrow. The man doing the dragging was fully draped with softly rotting rags and a hooded jacket. He left his right arm and spoke with a tone not heard in ages. A dry, grim crackle in his throat preceded humorless utterances. The soul of this man is yet beclaimed. What doth give you the right to knock upon death's own door? We have been charged with preventing the end of our world, and his skill is needed. I pleaded without thinking. Stepping back from the altar, I surveyed a landscape from which all color had faded. Even the bishop attending the resurrection was pallid and unmoving. All that remained alive were Righteous, Undal, and myself. If he cannot maintain a holy relic of the Djinn goddess Alavane, then our war... I do beg pardon. The cold dread stopped me. I know not of Alavane the Djinn. Undal corrected me with a proposal that had more tact. We need this clown to paint a canvas in the name of Alavane, the 5th daughter of the first Djinn, Salmaputra, who is likely to wage war on our reality. This painting is a symbol of our plane's peaceful offering, which symbolizes an effort to remain, sovereign? His punctuating stutter gave me a subtle hint at the true weight of his expression. Just as mortal nobles like to claim their subjects as free, we still understand being under their control. In consideration of your effort, I may yet afford your esteem. The grim figure croaked. For lending the soul and vessel of this man, I levy the price of your relic to hold collateral. Righteous made a start at an answer, but stifled himself with an afterthought. He approached the altar and scratched his chin, while my eyes darted to the lone relic we had available. With whatever luck, I hadn't even noticed it in all this time. A thick-headed silvery hammer that served as the sole symbol of Harrow. I took up a place between the paladin and death's broker. Undal was less patient. It's the only thing we've got, Righteous. He'll give it back when we're done. That's what collateral means to him. With pensive resolve, the paladin hefted the hammer over Yoni's crumpled body. I will offer Harrow's fist of judgment, a gift to our people from justice itself. There was no pause for consideration before the color of reality faded back in, and the precious stone we brought for Yoni's resurrection exploded into piercing shards, which somehow focused themselves toward the holy men. Some of their blood was thrown into the air while my friend's body began to boil into being from a few bones surrounded by thickening muscles. I do swear on my own eyes, a sanguineous cloud did fall from the holy men onto the bare nether flesh and aged the surface to a rusty brown mess that pulsed, growing larger and paler. We all looked on with perverted curiosity, as if somehow we knew this was not the intended effect of the bishop's miracle. Yoni's flesh cracked and peeled into the shape of his face and features. With thirsty, ghostly skin and dry, bony cheeks, his corpse did speak, and its voice was that of my dead friend. I'm surprised. That. He struggled a moment. More. He struggled a moment more to literally shake the dust from his throat. You actually had a relic. 23rd Cancer to the 2nd of Leo. With Yoni in tow and thankfully few questions asked about his appearance, Undal bought our way back to Urkjakart. Once upon the shore, we located the passage back to the temple, crossed the stone corridor, and entered into the sweat-addled bedchamber of Alavain. We gagged on the air, which had become riddled with the stench of sex and strong wine. Alavain sat at the side of her bed with the conflict sleeping soundly next to her. She had assumed his size, a touch shorter than she originally appeared. From the corner of the room came a different smell. When we finally peered into the shadows, we found poor Francis Orson, crumpled into a heap, and long has been breathless. What happened to Orson? I dared to question. Alavain remarked somewhat coldly. He wanted to join us, and we let him. He gave up on us after the 3rd day. Then he simply watched on, and when he should have gone to seek nutrition. How could... I begged to speak, but was cut short by the goddess. He had a weak mind, Faust. I did not enthrall him, nor did I seek to entice him. Francis chose to burden himself for pleasure, and then chose to ignore his needs until he perished. It is oft the folly of your species to obsess over the ideal that you named perfection. While I do not have a mortal body, many mortals find me attractive. But the quality I value most in your people is the ability to overcome such instincts. If you can conquer that, then you may even be able to conquer me. For that reason, though, I do not suffer Francis Orson's passing, and instead feel relieved that he has not had offspring of his own. In fact, he said so himself. Had I known him as a friend, I might have felt angry with Alavain's logic. Instead, I found the truth in it. Orson had clearly chosen madness from the start, so I chose not to pity him, and instead congratulate him on living for his dreams. If knowing this and seeing that was more important than seeking life, then I can only assume the old sailor died happy, though this behavior is typical of a specific disease, if I do recall. Yoni was given the canvas, a rather normal sort of object. It was simple and bare, clean and ready for paint. The details were shared with him, and I sat down here to write when I learned of what was to come. We were to be set at the tropics of our homelands, in the desert beyond Thriss, to begin the painting. Yoni would paint the dunes there, and then we were to move north, stopping once a fortnight to paint whatever Yoni saw fit of the landscape atop the previous portrait. He will not be finished until he paints the final vista, the crest of the earth's crown, beyond the glaciers that once marked the furthest reaches of my own country. As far north as can be gone before everything becomes south, a phenomenon only theorized by elder scouts of Fark's Keep. I bemoan the grim reality, this responsibility that has been thrust on us by a daughter of the first Dijin, a hapless drunkard of a girl despite her noble blood. She shares her strong wine with us to commemorate our journey, but also condemns us to a march of 3 years if luck is with us at all.